Stephanie was hands down the best intern/resident of her group. I'm only in season 14, and I already miss her. She was miles more interesting than Miss I lived in my car. Yes, Joe, we get it. You struggled. Stephanie had genuine chemistry with everyone. Her dynamic with Amelia, fantastic. Her scenes with Richard, gold. Honestly, how did we end up with Joe as the last one standing? Stephanie actually had depth. She went through a lot, but you never heard her whining about it. She lived in the moment, strong, brave, and focused. Meanwhile, Joe's fine, I guess, but she's also kind of immature, like she's stuck in emotional freshman year. Now, to be fair, I liked Stephanie, loved Joe. Shane had his moments. Brooks was a gem. Leah, well, she was there, sort of questionable, but okay. The interns after that, total grab bag. Some hits, mostly misses. Also, let's talk about Brooks again. She was special. Derek never really took an intern under his wing until her. That meant something. Meanwhile, Stephanie, great doctor, great presence, but depending on who you ask, a little toxic too. Still, I'd take her over some of the others any day. Are they actively trying to get us to stop watching this show? Let's talk about Bust Your Windows. What in the actual fever dream was that? Our main medical storyline was coaxing a little kid to fart? Seriously? That was the big arc. I genuinely had to ask myself if I imagined the whole thing. And then there's Debbie Allen, brought in just to handwave away one of the only lasting consequences for malpractice that any of the new residents have ever faced. That's how we're using legends now? Don't even get me started on that window washer storyline. Not only was it predictable to the point of parody, but the wise older wife angle. For a man who looks like he's easily pushing 40, sure, January, I'm half convinced that some of these episodes are being generated by ChatGPT, and I say that as someone literally writing this with ChatGPT. Look, I made my peace years ago that the show would never return to its original glory days. I've learned to just go along for the ride, but even with my lowered expectations, this episode felt like a social experiment. Like they're testing us to see just how bad it can get before we all collectively jump ship. No one faces consequences anymore. Characters are doing absolutely unhinged things with zero follow-through. Like Hunt, in an open relationship, Christina's guilt-ridden, loyal to a fault, PTSD-ridden, traditional ex-husband, the same man who already lost his mind over Teddy cheating on him. And now he's out here trying to be cool with polyamory. Did the writers just forget his entire arc? Speaking of farting patients, apparently that's the most medically accurate this show's been in years. Not even kidding. Remember when Izzie couldn't discharge a patient until he passed gas? Or when Alex and Bailey dealt with that by pairing him with someone even more annoying. At least back then, it felt like someone had gone to med school. I've watched every single episode of this show. I am invested, for better or very clearly worse. But if I could go back in time, I would have jumped ship the second Christina walked out of those hospital doors. I genuinely cannot understand how George is so hated, while Alex is practically worshipped by half the fandom. I'm on season 10, about to start episode 3, and while I haven't seen everything yet, I unfortunately know quite a few spoilers. For instance, I know Joe and Alex get married, and then he leaves her for Izzie. Lovely. George was actually my favorite character until his death in season 6. I had no idea he was going to die. I just knew he left early, so I avoided online discussions until it happened. Once I did start reading what people were saying, I was floored to see how much George is hated. Like, genuinely despised. People say he sexually assaulted Meredith, which completely baffled me. That's not how I interpreted the scene at all. Was it a dumb move? Absolutely. Meredith was using sex to cope with her direct-related trauma, and George walked into that situation totally unprepared, emotionally speaking. I thought it was reckless and immature, especially how he ghosted her afterward, but I never saw it as assault. Meredith herself later refers to George as one of the good ones, and they became friends again pretty quickly. If she had truly seen it as something non-consensual, wouldn't that have been reflected in her words and actions? Was George silly? Sure. Was he petty? Sometimes. But a predator? That feels like a huge stretch. Let's not pretend George was a perfect angel. His treatment of Callie during their marriage was cringe central. And don't get me started on his "Izzie's a supermodel and she'd never want me" speech. Yikes. But if we canceled every character who said something stupid or cheated on someone, we'd have no one left to root for. Honestly. And then there's this take I see all the time. People celebrating that George got hit by a bus. Really? That's the bar now? Meanwhile, these same people turn around and rave about how much they love Alex. So let's do a little recap of some of Alex Karev's greatest hits, shall we? Posted half-naked photos of Izzie in the locker room. Charming. Slept around with interns, sometimes pretending he wanted more. Season 9, anyone? Shamed April when she was nervous about losing her virginity to him. Class act. Got mad at Izzie for grieving George. After the hospital shooting, abandoned Lexi and ghosted her completely while she was clearly spiraling. Threw Meredith under the bus by telling Owen she tampered with the clinical trial, even though she was basically his only real friend. And yet, Alex is the sweetheart of the show. I don't even hate Alex. I actually like him a lot and sympathize with his backstory. But I can't wrap my head around why his every transgression is brushed aside because he grew or Joe made him better. Except, plot twist, he leaves Joe for Izzie, so how much did he really change? If George had stuck around, I think his character arc would have been incredible. He had the emotional core, the kindness, the potential. Meanwhile, Alex, by season 10, has already hit most of his developmental milestones. Good with kids, close with Meredith and Christina. From there, it kind of plateaus. His treatment of women doesn't dramatically improve, and his personal growth feels stalled. In the end, I think it comes down to this. When a generally decent character makes a mistake, it's blown up and defines them. But when a character is introduced as abrasive or problematic, like Alex, people excuse everything as character development or just ignore it. George is remembered for his flaws. Alex is remembered despite his. What is the deal with Alex Karev? Seriously, can someone explain how this guy has fans? Because from where I'm sitting, there's not a whole lot to like. He's rude, condescending, and treats people, especially women, like absolute garbage. The way he acted with his exes, hi Izzie, how he only turns on the charm when he's trying to get laid. And don't even get me started on how he uses his rough childhood as a free pass to be a jerk. Like, childhood trauma doesn't equal lifelong license to be awful. Yes, I get it. He's great with kids. Adorable, even. But then he turns around and unleashes one of his infamous temper tantrums, and I'm ready to throw hands with my screen. The anger issues, off the charts. The emotional growth, a painfully slow crawl. I know this probably sounds like a vent session, and okay, it kinda is, but here's the thing. People aren't supposed to be perfect right from episode 1. That's literally the whole point of character development. The writers build them up from messes into actual, maybe sorta likable humans. It's the journey. That's the magic of storytelling. Still doesn't mean I'm giving Alex a free pass. Cough exhibit A, Owen. Just rewatched the second episode and had to laugh. Meredith tells a girl she's too young to be her roommate because she was in kindergarten when the Challenger exploded. Naturally, I looked it up. Meredith is supposed to be 27 in season 1, which aired in 2005. The Challenger explosion was in 1986. So Meredith would have been, what, 8? And this other girl was maybe 5 or 6. That's a whopping 2 to 3 years difference. Scandalous. Honestly, it felt like Meredith just didn't want to live with someone she worked with and was throwing out whatever excuse sounded dramatic enough. Oh no, she was practically a zygote when the Challenger exploded. I could never share a fridge with her. But then, she didn't have time to find a roommate outside the hospital, so she just gave up and got over it. To make things even more entertaining, early pilot Meredith was written as 31, then quietly de-aged to 29. Not a huge deal, until you realize they kept adjusting the timeline like a drunk time traveler. If Meredith was 31 in 2005, she'd have been born in 1974. If she's 29, that puts her birth year at 1976. Fast forward 5 seasons, and somehow only 2 years have passed, and suddenly Lexi is 25 in season 6. That makes Meredith 31 again by her 3rd year of residency, which actually lines up, miraculously. Bottom line, Grey's Anatomy and timelines? Absolute chaos. Trying to make sense of it will give you a headache. Meredith's supposed to be around 29 during her intern year, which they retroactively set in 2007, thanks to Lexi's age and Mark's eventual death year. So yeah, she would have been 8 when the Challenger exploded, not some ancient sage reminiscing about the space shuttle from a rocking chair. Ellen Pompeo, on the other hand, was 17 at the time, so maybe that line hit more personally for her than for the character. What's an inaccuracy you just can't get past? I'll go first. I worked as a dispatcher and security officer at a major hospital for 2 years, so watching that fire/explosion scene with Stephanie and the little girl, absolutely infuriating. There is no universe in which modern fire code would allow people to get trapped like that. As soon as there's a fire or lockdown, all doors are supposed to automatically unlock. No exterior door in a hospital would require a key fob to exit, because, basic safety. And while we're on the topic of TV medical nonsense, surgeons casually strolling patients up to CT? Yeah, no, that's not a thing. Surgeons standing around the ambulance bay like they're waiting for a pizza delivery? Also no, unless you're April or Owen, and even then, only because you're trauma surgeons. Everyone else, back to the OR. Sending someone into an MRI without ear protection? That's not just inaccurate, it's borderline cruel. Ever heard one of those machines? It's like being inside a jet engine. And while we're here, getting a head MRI without the cage. Not happening. That thing exists for a reason. But hey, who needs realism when you've got dramatic slow-mo and emotional music, right? Best line ever? Oh, where do we even start? Sure, there are the legendary ones, Meredith's pick me, choose me, love me, and the absolute mic drop of you don't get to call me a whore. Iconic, unforgettable, quoted into oblivion. But besides those, what's the best line ever? Personally, I lose it every single time Izzie, of all people, looks Addison in the face and says, God got a virgin pregnant by magic. God is not playing by the rules. I mean, come on. The delivery, the logic, the divine sarcasm, it's everything. Then there's Christina with the forever mood. Screw beautiful, I'm brilliant. If you want to appease me, compliment my brain. Honestly, just tattoo that on my soul. And okay, this might be an unpopular opinion, but I love Penny in that episode where Meredith's jaw is wired shut. The way she stands her ground and says, she is my patient. I know what I'm doing. She needed air, so I got her some damn air. Like, yes, Penny. Come through with the emergency tracheotomy energy. Sandra Oh appreciation post Sandra Oh is just marvelous. Truly. The way her voice cracks when she cries, gut-wrenching. She doesn't just cry, she transforms. Christina Yang isn't supposed to show emotion, and yet, when Sandra cries as Christina, it hits. Like, soul-level hits. Now, I'm very much a cry when they cry on TV kind of person, but when Sandra Oh cried on Grey's, specifically in that hospital bed scene, and the post-wedding meltdown, I lost it. Full fetal position, sobbing into a pillow, lost it. That's what acting is supposed to do. It's not just emotion, it's transference. You feel it because she means it. Sandra is phenomenal. My only critique? She's so good that I never fully bought Christina as the so-called emotionless robot. Honestly, if we tallied up all of Christina's crying scenes, I'm pretty sure she outcried the emotional characters. And somehow, it still made sense, still felt real. She makes you cry in the sad scenes, laugh in the funny ones, and straight up beam with pride when Christina wins. Best actress on the show, hands down, not even a contest. Watching her doesn't feel like watching an actor. It feels like watching a real person live their real, complicated, messy, glorious life. Sandra Oh, an absolute force. Richard Webber just cannot catch a break. I'm on season 16 now. His niece just passed away. And honestly, since season 1, the man hasn't had a single happy season. It started with Meredith showing up to work at the hospital where he was chief. And now look at him, working somewhere else entirely. He's spent years mentoring people, supporting them through every kind of disaster imaginable. And what does he get in return? Fired by one of the very people he helped rise. And when he goes through tough times, oh, suddenly it's all finger-pointing and blame games. Like, if I were him, I'd have peaced out by season 3 for the sake of my mental health. No hospital is worth that much drama. Do you really think they'll go through with it? I didn't want to drop spoilers in the title, but here we are. Some fans predicted this pairing, but let's be honest, most of us didn't see it coming or didn't want to. Are they seriously going to pair up Jules and Winston? I'm beyond tired of the whole boss and underling fall in love trope. It's lazy, overdone, and in this case, completely lacking in chemistry. Not to mention, it's way too soon for either of them to be diving into a serious relationship. At this point, it feels like they're just shoving random characters together and hoping it sticks. Honestly, it's just bad writing. Jules has gone through Link, Quan, Yasuda, and now possibly Winston, all in about a year, both in show time and real time. Can we please give her Coochie a vacation? She's earned it. Oh, Bailey, the queen of double standards. Let's break this down, shall we? So in season 4, episode 3, she takes Alex to task for being mean to Norman, the bumbling intern who was basically an accident waiting to happen. Bailey says, interns are basically teenagers. We're not hard on them because it's fun. We're hard on them because this is a life or death situation. They need to learn that. Fair point, right? Sure, but then, in the same episode, Bailey goes off on Meredith for, wait for it, giving Lexi a little tough love by having her intubate a patient who was, for all intents and purposes, already dead. And let's not forget, Bailey had interns doing the exact same thing. So now, apparently, Meredith is a monster for doing exactly what Bailey would have done. But here's the kicker. Bailey gets all personal and says Lexi's upset because Meredith didn't offer her some cutesy comforting words like she's entitled to. And of course, it's all because Lexi's mama came to Meredith with hiccups and surprise. Died. So naturally, Meredith must have been harboring some deep, unspoken hate for Lexi and her entire family, right? Classic. Bailey wraps up this emotional tirade with, whether you like it or not, your job is to help that girl be a better doctor. So helpy here. So to sum up, Bailey's mad at Meredith for doing the same thing she would have done. Got it. But let's look at the bigger picture here. Norman's a disaster. He literally almost got a kid killed by interrupting Alex during a critical moment while trying to take a patient history. Yet Bailey's all about giving him a free pass because, well, he's still learning and he's just a teenager. Lexi, on the other hand, just lost her mother a month ago, and instead of showing some understanding for her emotional state, Meredith treats her like a robot, giving her zero room for human emotion. Was Meredith right? Technically, yes, but context is key. Lexi was in distress. She wasn't just another intern. She had baggage. Now, if Norman had just buried his own child, yeah, maybe we'd cut him some slack. But that's not the case here. It's all about context, Bailey. Teaching isn't a one-size-fits-all deal. Alex and Meredith have their own teaching styles, just like Norman and Lexi have their own needs. So, if we're going to call out Bailey for hypocrisy, let's not. She was just giving different advice for different situations. However, whether that advice was right or wrong is another story. In the end, Bailey wasn't being hypocritical. She was just playing the "you have to understand the motives of the trauma-ridden intern" card. A little too late for Meredith and Lexi's case, but at least she wasn't totally clueless, just a little bit. I totally get your frustration with Susan Gray. She might have had good intentions, but she was so pushy and insistent, especially with Meredith. Defending Thatcher and acting all put out when Meredith didn't want to hear about him? Seriously? Meredith needed someone to step in during her formative years, and Susan never really did that. She just hovered, trying too hard to be involved, but never really understanding what Meredith needed. And Maggie's mom, oh, don't even get me started. I get that she wasn't a bad person, and it was tragic when she passed, but the whole lying about her marriage thing. Come on, Maggie was a grown woman minus 30 years old, to be exact, and yet her mom thought she couldn't handle the truth about her parents' relationship. That feels way more damaging than just telling her the truth from the start. Talk about creating unnecessary drama. As for Derek and Amelia's mom, yikes. The way she treated Amelia, absolutely horrendous. And George's mom? She definitely had her moments where she seemed loving, but also totally overbearing. That episode where she asked his friends about his private life, and Izzie eagerly spilled the tea, so uncomfortable, it was like she just couldn't respect boundaries at all. I love Grey's Anatomy, but let's be real, it's starting to get completely out of hand. I've watched and rewatched the first 15 seasons more times than I can count, and at this point, those seasons are practically in my DNA. But now, well, I still watch every new episode, even though I loathe most of the later seasons, except, of course, for the one time Derek shows up and the Joe and Link thing. I'll give credit where it's due. I'll keep tuning in until they pull the plug, but honestly, something has got to give. Like, where did all the normal cases go? Why is Amelia always doing surgeries that no human on Earth can even comprehend, let alone perform? And can we talk about how there's a body in every single episode, just gushing blood like it's a new river on the block? I swear, every time someone's bleeding, it's like they're auditioning for a horror movie. Then there's Owen. What is he doing here? Does anyone even care anymore? Why is he still sticking around just to annoy us all? And the interns? Good grief. They're all so insufferable, trying to do everything but their actual jobs. I just want one episode with a normal case. Maybe a car crash. Throw in a little patient drama? Sure, but do we really need some crazy tragedy every single week? And no, it doesn't need to be some never-before-seen disaster that only happens on Grey's Anatomy. Look, I get that they're trying to keep things fresh and different, but most real-life doctors work on, regular cases day in and day out. Sure, it's probably not as dramatic as saving a life in a 5-minute window with an impossible surgery, but there's gotta be a happy medium here. It's honestly starting to feel like the show is ridiculing us with the random, ridiculous plot lines. TLBDR. I know this is all over the place, but honestly, this show is doing way too much in every sense. The cast, the relationships, the surgeries. It would be a lot more interesting if they went back to their roots and embraced some realism instead of turning every character into a god-complex superhero.